Good evening. I'd like to call the January 3rd to attend. If they had any comments that they would like to submit and have read in the record, that we would be happy to read them. I do have one comment. I don't know if there are any others. And is there anybody here who nevertheless showed up and intended to give public comment? Does not appear so. So seeing none. For public comment from Stephanie B. Scalise, former city prosecutor for University Heights. I wish to send my most sincere thanks to the City of University Heights, to Mayor Michael Dillon Brennan, Law Director Luke McConville, Police Chief Dustin Rogers, and the esteemed members of this City Council for allowing me the privilege of serving the city as its prosecutor from 2019 until last month. The citizens of University Heights are hardworking and kind people. The members of its police department are unparalleled professionals. Being their lawyer was an honor. I truly loved every single day of the job. After much consideration, I wish to make this brief public comment to correct some implications that I think were unintentionally made at the last council meeting. I do not know why this body seemed to think that I was making $70,000. A review of my W-2s show that I was paid $11,200.24 in 2019 and $57,752.92 in 2020. My last paycheck stub from 2021 indicated about $62,000, likely because I was paid additional funds for a limited project that was completed. During my tenure as prosecutor, I was on call 24/7 and did not take a single day off during which our police department could not reach me in an emergency. My home was open at late night hours to obtain search warrants. I prosecuted all misdemeanor crimes, reviewed and made charging decisions for most felony crimes, prosecuted housing code and building code violations, and provided ongoing training to both the police department and housing and community development departments. I ensured that every single crime victim's rights were protected under Marcy's Law. As the assistant law director, I was available to support the law director with any requests made of me, and I believe that I did enjoy a good team working relationship with him. Comments made at the last meeting implying otherwise were likely unintentionally ill-informed. If I could wish for any result of this attempt to set the record straight, it is only that, as this body conducts its business publicly in the future, that it would be mindful that the employees you are talking about are dedicated public servants, and they have feelings too. I leave this job with confidence in the next city prosecutor. Michael Cicero is an excellent lawyer, and he will surely do great work for you all. I pray for the safety and health of the members of the University Heights Police Department. I hope for the continued prosperity and success of this beautiful community and for the unity and wisdom of its leadership. You will all always have a friend in me. Are there any other public comments? Very good. I'd like to thank Prosecutor Stephanie Scalise for her service to the University Heights community. Regrettably, I was not here at the last meeting to say so while she was still here. The next item on the agenda is item 6, reports and communications from the City Council and the taking of action thereon. Item A is the election of Vice Mayor and oath of office. Is there a motion or discussion? Is there anybody who would care to speak at this time?
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gould.
Thank you. I would have had the opportunity to serve on council for the past couple of years and have really appreciated the work that Michelle Weiss has done in the position of Vice Mayor. I know that that position is one that takes quite a bit of not only finesse but also planning and fortitude. I appreciate the work that you've done for this council, Vice Mayor, and the planning especially. I recognized towards the last part of last year, as we were having our conversations, that you had the first half of this year planned out already in your calendar. And as I was like, well, what about this thing? Oh, yes, I have that on the calendar for this time. And not only that, but the work and the respect that you have from the community, I think, speaks volumes. So for all of those reasons, I would like to nominate you to continue in the role of Vice Mayor for the next session.
Thank you.
I heartily second that for all of the above reasons and more. You're extraordinarily well-suited to the role of leading council and managing the affairs that we legislate. So I have every confidence. I'm delighted if you will, again, take that on.
And I will third that motion, if that's such a thing. Ms. Weiss and I started our career here on council at the same time, and it's interesting to see what 6 years later we're now senior members. It's kind of odd to think about, but you know, you have been such an extraordinary role on this council. You're very organized. You've attended every meeting, every committee meeting. You never miss a thing, and your passion towards the city is just.
Unparalleled.
Yeah, exactly. So I look forward to having you be our vice mayor for another 2 more years.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. We have a motion by Mr. Gould, a second by Mrs. Blankfeld, and if, though not typically contemplated, I'll note the third by Mr. Rock. Is there any discussion? Well, seeing none then, we'll call the question and take a vote. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Rack?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Okay, very good. The ayes have it, and Michelle Weiss has been reelected vice mayor. We do have an oath of office that we can enter at this time, an affirmation of that office. Mrs. Weiss, do you want to go up, or do we want to do this here? We're mostly on the camera.
We can do it here, but
Okay, well then why don't we stand? Hand is raised, and you'll repeat after me. I, Michelle Weiss,
I, Michelle Weiss,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
to support the Constitution
to support the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter
and the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the City of University Heights,
of the City of University Heights,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
as Vice Mayor
as Vice Mayor
of the City of University Heights.
of the City of University Heights.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. So the next item on the agenda is item B, appointment of mayor as safety director and oath of office. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Weiss. Is, I assume appointment of mayor as safety director. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Rock. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld?
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs?
Aye.
Mr. Rack?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Mr. McConville, will you be so kind as to administer the oath? I will. I don't have one up here.
Here. Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Michael Dillon Brennan,
I, Michael Dillon Brennan,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution
to support the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter and ordinances
and the Charter and ordinances
of the City of University Heights,
of the City of University Heights,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
as as Safety Director
as Safety Director
of the City of University Heights.
of the City of University Heights.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Just a minor point of order. Can you swear him in, since you're not the law director?
I am the law director.
I thought you expired at the end and you're being reappointed today.
No,
No, it went over into January.
February.
Yeah, once we get.
Actually
Yeah.
Okay,
expires
I
in
just wanted to
February.
make sure that we had a proper
Thank
safety.
you for checking, Mr.
Yes,
Gould.
and
Of course.
in more detail when my ordinance is up.
Oh, February 1st, okay.
Okay, before I move on from item 6, Mrs. Weiss and members of council, were there any other reports or communications you wanted to express at this time? If there are none, then I will move on to item 7, reports and communications from the mayor and the taking of action thereon. So I have a report, I'll keep it brief, and we will also then administer the oath to our new prosecutor. So, in lieu of the ceremonies and administration of oaths to new council members and myself as mayor, those formalities were done briefly yesterday, Sunday, January 2nd, 2022, at Walter Stinson Community Park. A more celebratory ceremony will be rescheduled in a few weeks when such a gathering can be done in a more responsible and safer way. In the interest of keeping this meeting brief, this evening I will forego the full statement that might coincide with the beginning of a second term of office. Much of that I will deliver in the form of a speech when we have our ceremonial swearing in on a date to be announced. Such statement would detail the administration's priorities for 2022 and beyond, which to some degree I have covered in mayor's reports since the election. I will also go over much of this in detail when we release the budget. A budget is, among other things, a statement of priorities and values. During the last campaign, I both listened to the community and made the case for a sustainable University Heights. The 2022 budget will reflect that. Prior to the current wave of COVID cases and the Omicron variant, I reported the target date of Monday, January 10, 2022, to release the budget. At this time, that is still our target date for release. I know there will be challenges relating to public meetings and how we hold them. This evening, the challenge has been met in part by my excusing most directors, chiefs, and department heads from personal attendance tonight. There are a few written reports that I will read into the record, but for the most part, I hope to economize our time and minimize the number of people present in the room to those required to be here under open meetings law. In closing, I welcome our new council members, and I look forward to working together with both our incoming and returning council members to achieve our goals and fulfill our vision as articulated on the campaign trail this past election season and to the good and thoughtful governance of the city. The people expect results, and working together, we will deliver. I look forward to the process, to progress, and working with you in service to the community. Thank you. This concludes my report. But then I will move on to item A, which is the oath of office to be administered to Michael R. Cicero. Excuse me, Michael E. Cicero. You will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Michael E. Cicero,
Michael E. Cicero,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution
to support the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter
and the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the City of University Heights,
of the City of University Heights,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability,
as prosecutor
as prosecutor
and
and
Assistant Law Director
Assistant Law Director
of the City of University Heights.
of the City of University Heights.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. You would sign here. Thank you, Mr. Cicero. We now move to item 8, reading and disposition of ordinances, resolutions, motions, and consideration of agenda items. The first item on the agenda is amended ordinance 2021-56, reappointing Luke F. McConville as law director effective January 3rd, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Before I finish, do we want to amend this?
We do.
We do, so.
There's a amended version in front of council members that
Yes.
simply takes the date from January 3rd to February 1st. I'd been asked to review the appointing ordinance. The appointing ordinance was through the end of this January. So what this ordinance will do is appoint me for a new term commencing February 1, and that term will be for a term of 23 months instead of 24 months, so that it will expire at the end of calendar year and bring the position in line with the other department head positions that are reappointed at the end of calendar years.
Okay, very good. So I should probably reread this agenda item to the new, since I didn't finish reading. I kind of made hash of that, didn't I, Mr. McConville?
You did. I think, we might as well entertain a motion to amend.
Why don't we do that? Is there a motion to amend agenda item A to an ordinance reappointing Luke F. McConville as law director effective February 1, 2022, and declaring an emergency?
Also move.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Got a motion by Mrs. Blankfeld, a second by Mrs. Sachs. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, let's see, this is, we said on declaring an emergency, so to clarify for the record, Mrs. Blankfeld, was your motion on emergency?
Yes, thank you.
And Mrs. Sachs, your second remains?
Yes.
Thank you. Very good, then we will take, well, this is an amended ordinance.
This is just to amend, so.
Oh, right, this is just to amend the agenda. Oh, thank you. Okay, so this is just to amend the agenda, so please disregard what I said about the emergency. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the motion to amend the agenda?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs,
Aye.
Mr. Rapp,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. So the agenda has now been amended as follows. Agenda item A, an ordinance reappointing Luke F. McConville as law director effective February 1, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Mr. McConville, anything further you'd like to say with regard to this agenda item?
Only to reiterate remarks I made at the last meeting, which is that I appreciate council's reappointment and the confidence in me, and I look forward to being your lawyer over the course of the next 2 years.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Would also add that I am happy to support your reappointment and look forward to signing this ordinance as soon as I am permitted. So, thank you. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-56?
Mayor, also move
Okay, motion by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by Mr. King.
on emergency.
And this is on emergency, and your second is also on emergency. Very good. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Who was our second?
Mr. King?
King? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McConville, since this was on the prior council meeting agenda, but it's been amended, do we do 2 votes? One to suspend and then one to pass, or is it simply 1 vote at this juncture?
I would do 2.
Let's do 2 then.
Yeah.
Very good. We will then take 2 votes. The first vote is on the suspension of the rules, which allows us to consider this matter on emergency. And then the second vote is on the main motion itself, which is ordinance 2021-56. Since it's being considered on emergency, it requires 5 votes to pass as opposed to the simple majority of 4 for a non-emergency resolution. So we will take 2 votes, starting with the motion on the starting with the suspension of the rules. So Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on that?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs,
Aye.
Mr. Rapp,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. The rules are therefore suspended, and now we may consider the main motion. So, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the main motion?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries, and ordinance 2021-56 is adopted on emergency. Thank you. And Mr. McConville, I look forward to working with you once again.
Likewise.
Letter B is ordinance 2022-01, reappointing Kelly M. Thomas as clerk of council effective January 3rd, 2022, and declaring an emergency and the administration of oath.
Mayor, I have a question. I'd like to
Yes.
move to pass this, but I'd like to ask the law director. I see an effective date, but I don't see term expiration date on this piece of legislation. Can you clarify? Usually it's a term of 1 year or 2 years, as we've done in the past, but I don't see it on there. Am I missing it?
I
I would like Mrs. Thomas to stay with us as long as she can tolerate us, but
know we have used the same language that we used on our previous appointment. We indicate that she'll serve at the pleasure of council.
okay, I know specifically last time we had a period of 2 years. I'm curious, that's all.
Well, we can amend for that term, if that's council's preference.
I'll do whatever my colleagues.
Isn't that something that's by charter, that it states 2 years, or?
I believe there's a state statute that creates the 2-year maximum appointment.
So is the last last sentence of section 1 therefore in violation of that? Until a successor is qualified to duly appointed, meaning that the appointment is indefinite?
Well, I think what we've always done is we've always just reappointed in keeping with that statute.
Okay. I'm fine with the language as is.
I just
and,
wanted to
yeah.
make sure we weren't, I wanted to keep things so it was in line with everything else we've done. If we'll
6
leave it
here,
open.
half a dozen
Yeah.
there.
Leave it open, we can leave it open.
I'm fine with it.
That was a good point, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Is there any other discussion on this motion, or on this proposed ordinance, rather? There's been no motion as of yet.
I would like to make that motion, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Blankfeld to reappoint Kelly M. Thomas as clerk of council effective January 1, 2022, and declaring an emergency. By Mrs. Blankfeld.
1 year or 2 years?
We're leaving it open.
Okay.
It was confusing.
Is that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Motion by Mrs. Blankfeld, also on emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second by emergency.
Very good. Second by Mrs. Weiss. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'll just echo Councilperson Blankfeld's sentiments. I'm so grateful to have you with us still, and I hope that we get to work together for a very long time. Thank you for everything you do for us, really. Thank you.
Then finally, I'd be remiss if I too didn't say that I look forward to, that I support, this ordinance and look forward to signing it at my next opportunity. So we'll be delighted to have Mrs. Thomas back for 2 years or more. So thank you. If there are no further comments, we will take 2 votes. The first is on the suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould,
Aye.
Very good. And then on the main motion.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. I look forward to serving with you once again. Okay. Next item is item C, Ordinance 2021-64, authorizing the mayor to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council Incorporated, patrol officers, and declaring an emergency. This is on second reading. Mr. Iosu could not be here in person this evening due to the need to quarantine. I am prepared to call him and put my speakerphone up to the microphone to have him talk. I know he spoke at the last meeting. Happy to do that at this juncture, or if there is, I don't know, I know that we have 3 new council members who may have watched the meeting but may have questions of their own for Mr. Iosu. Shall I proceed with calling Mr. Iosu to get him on the phone? Or would you like to proceed at this time to consider this ordinance without his telephonic presence?
There's no changes, correct?
No.
There are no changes. Okay.
I think the highlighted sections were what Mr. Iosu presented on. I understand them, but if any of my newer colleagues would like to hear from him or have questions for him, I'm happy to have them.
I viewed the meeting online and reviewed the contracts. So
I'm sorry, Mr. Can't hear you.
sorry. I watched the meeting and reviewed the contract, so I don't have a need to hear from him.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I also reviewed the meeting, saw the meeting notes, minutes from last time, so I have no particular questions at this time.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cooney.
I also reviewed the lengthy document, so I think I understand it.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. With that in mind, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion on emergency for ordinance 2021-64.
Okay, very good. There's a motion on emergency by Mrs. Weiss to adopt ordinance 2021-64. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we do not need to suspend the rules as this is a second reading, but we will then take a vote on the main motion, which is the adoption of ordinance 2021-64. So, Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item D, ordinance 2022-02, authorizing the mayor to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council, Inc., for the sergeants and lieutenants and declaring an emergency. Same offer stands to call in Mr. Iosu. I think upon review you'll find that this particular document is substantially similar to the other document. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to call him. And if there are none, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-02 on emergency?
So movement.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Is there any discussion? Just as a matter of parliamentary clarification, because it just so happens that ordinance 2022-02 is on first reading and on an emergency, we will now take 2 votes. The first being on the suspension of the rules and then a vote on the main motion. So, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on that first part, the suspension of the rules?
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. And then on the main motion.
Mrs. Blankfeld,
Aye.
Mrs. Sachs,
Aye.
Mr. Rock,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. King,
Aye.
Mr. Cooney,
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is item E, a motion to approve the retirement health savings agreement with Mission Square for the fire department. Now, neither Mr. Kennedy nor Chief Perko are here. There was a memo in the packet regarding this particular motion. I also have a memorandum I can read into the record from Chief Perko. which states as follows: Mayor Brennan and members of council, this memo serves to show my full support of this evening's agenda item E. Item E, motion to approve retirement health savings agreement with Mission Square for the fire department. Collective bargaining negotiations that took place mid-year of 2020 between the administration and IAFF Local 974 resulted in an MOU signed on October 31st, 2020. This MOU served as an agreement that both parties would have ongoing discussions to establish a retirement health care account. The proposed retirement health savings RHS program provided by Mission Square will serve to act as a public plan sponsor for a retiree health plan with responsibility to obtain investment alternatives and services for employees that choose to participate. The RHS will assist employees separating from the city to disperse any final payout funds into the managed RHS for any future health care needs. Entering this agreement with Mission Square will serve to meet the intent of the MOU and recently approved CBA between the city and IAFF Local 974. Additionally, a current member of IAFF Local 974 is retiring this week and could immediately benefit from this RHS if approved. Thank you for the consideration. I would also indicate that the administration does support the passage of this motion to approve the retirement health savings agreement with Mission Square. And by doing so tonight, this does afford the opportunity for that retiree to take advantage of this program if that retiree so chooses. Mrs. Sachs, looks like you have a question.
Is there discussion now? I'm not sure if you want.
There can be. It sounded like
Or
Mr.
I'll wait
McConville was
until
going
that
to,
time.
yes.
I just have one comment to
Sure.
make to council, which is in reviewing the contract, there is an indemnification provision in the contract. And as a matter of law in Ohio, a municipality cannot provide indemnity to any party unless council appropriates funds for that obligation in an amount that's reasonable. And as a practical matter, what that means is that municipalities simply don't provide indemnification because they're not going to tie up funds to be held and not that cannot otherwise be used simply to enter into a contract. So Section 10 of the agreement will need to be modified slightly to indicate that it's a hold harmless provision, and the indemnification language will have to be stricken. With that change, I'm comfortable with the verbiage of the contract in terms of the services that are going to be provided and the obligations of the city.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Mrs. Sachs, did you still want to?
I have a question.
You have the floor.
Forgive me if I missed it in the documentation that we received. How is this funded? Is there contributions by the employer, the city, and the employee? I ask, especially, in the last sentence, the person's retiring imminently, and how is it funded for that person if it's approved?
That is a good question, and I can answer that, and others may be able to jump in as well. When a public employee retires, there is usually a payout of certain time banks and other items that have value. And in some instances, that payout can simply be issued as a check that is given to the employee. Here, in this instance, it could be directed into this account. So rather than taking a check for their payout for unpaid vacation or for unused vacation and sick time and PTO, it can then go to this HSA. Mr. McConville, anything I might add?
That is how I understand it, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, Mrs. Weiss.
I think just to clarify, does the city the city doesn't contribute to this HSA? It's completely the employee funds
Their
it?
timer
Correct.
that they've not
Okay.
used.
And
Okay.
it's not, it's separate from like a pension. It's separate
Right.
type of, okay.
Right, that's separate from any pension they have under PERS or any other retirement.
So it's possible if if they exhausted those benefits, their, whatever it is, PTO, sick, vacation, all those things, would there still be something left? Or this is really dependent upon the employees' participation,
Right, the ability to fund this account is based upon having banked time that was unused at the time of retirement.
Fine.
So if somebody had
So that
used,
vehicle is only funded by any unexpired, unspent time that they had coming?
Correct.
If they've used it all,
right,
to get it all in there before they retire, then this would not apply.
sure. If one used all their PTO, all their vacation time and had nothing banked, then there would be nothing to roll over into this.
Gotcha.
Just to clarify, do I understand correctly? I mean, so for public employees who are retiring, often one of the detriments in the first year of retirement is that they've received a large portion of money and then begin to pull down from their retirement. So at the end of the year, they have a tax burden that they wouldn't otherwise have. And so in this instance, by placing it into a tax-protected account at HSA, they can use that for future health future health expenses that they may have during their retirement years, and avoid the larger penalty, immediately begin pulling down pension dollars, and maintain a standard flow as they would into retirement without having this inflated amount at the beginning of their retirement, which they'll never get again and have to pay taxes on.
I got it now. Thank you.
Right,
Okay.
and while none of us are giving retirement or accountancy advice, I would generally agree that that may be the reason why we would offer this, and with the consultation of their own practitioner, they could decide if this account is right for them. Yes, thank you. Mrs. Weiss?
Thank you. So I also had two questions.
Yeah.
Do any other departments have an HSA currently?
Discussing this with Mr. Kennedy, the goal here is actually to make this available across all departments. We are having it here in the fire department just for economy of administration to get it started, but then the idea would be to transfer it so it's available to all employees and not just fire employees.
I think it's a great idea. It is a benefit that does not cost the city anything, and that just and it's a valuable benefit for these tax reasons. The one thing that I didn't see is there an expiration? Like, do they have to use, let's say they put in X amount of dollars, usually they expire at a certain time, and I didn't see that in here. Is this account open for as long as it's funded?
It was my impression that it was an ongoing account. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I'm not an ERISA lawyer, so I mean, it's like I know enough to be dangerous, but I believe that the amounts that are put into the account are fully vested upon their deposit.
Okay.
And I suspect, although I don't know, and this may be a question that Mr. Iosu could answer, that this may provide employees who have discretionary income with an opportunity to shelter some of that income from year to year and then utilize those amounts for healthcare expenditures during retirement.
So they would be able to make contributions to that HSA beyond what their employment with the city in their retirement years.
Or even
So
during...
while it may have been originally funded by these, non-spent benefit hours that transfer into dollars, they would continue to be able to use it as an HSA.
They could, yeah, that's my belief. I'm not an ERISA lawyer. I don't know all of the intricacies of the tax law as it relates to these kinds of accounts, but I know that there are ERISA-based healthcare plans that can be used in a way to shelter income as well, so.
Yeah, I just had one last question.
Yes.
Who is going to be administering the deposits into the account? It's not going to be the city, because that happens, I think that would tax our finance department if they had to be responsible for that.
Well, the finance department currently does the calculation when somebody retires with regard to what they are owed for all their time banks.
Right, what I'm saying is, though, if you have 100 employees that all of a sudden want to put $5 a month, or, every so often I want to put in X amount of dollars into my plan, and if the finance department's responsible for that.
Or are we doing it, like you said, if we're taking this as a template and creating that for the departments, do you mean to say that upon retirement,
Upon retirement,
someone could do that?
You're only offering this upon retirement?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
That
an
was
important
my
clarification.
understanding.
So yes, so the ease of administration is considerable. compared to what you
Okay,
were.
that's a different story.
Yeah, no, that would be different, what you're
I
saying.
thought it was going to be an opportunity for the employees to fund it whenever they wanted to, like throughout the year. Okay.
No,
Well,
this is for final payouts.
not giving tax advice, but I've heard that individuals who don't have high deductible health plans are not eligible to contribute to HSAs.
That's true.
So all of our employees are not offering a high deductible health plan. From my last review of our benefits, would not be eligible for that, is my understanding.
That is true.
That sounds right, Mr. Gould. That
So,
sounds-
Mayor, may I also
Yes,
ask the
thank you.
law director another question?
Oh, yes, go ahead, Mr. Gould.
Law Director, I'm making reference back to 11 and, 10. This seems to be fairly broad. Not only is it holding harmless and indemnifying, it's for any act, including negligence, it appears, any and all acts by any individual associated with the entity. And I just wanted to clarify with you how this would need to be modified to meet Ohio's law, and then also I think the city's interest in, I mean, if there's mismanagement, malfeasance, any of those items, it just seems like we are holding them harmless to any and all acts.
You mean we're holding Mission Square?
Correct.
Yeah. Good question.
Well, the initial ask is always to, and I don't want to say too much, but the initial ask is always to just get rid of the provision. Indemnification provisions, if they're not reciprocal, bother me. And I've always tried to impress upon colleagues the idea that indemnification provisions are superfluous because each party should simply be responsible for their own negligence or their own intentional misconduct. And so let's just let Ohio law govern on those issues. Once in a while that argument works, but it's always the starting point.
So would it be best for me to put the strike into the form of the motion, or to make a motion to strike that portion from the agreement and pass the motion as written in the agenda item?
I think it would probably be best just to, I mean, the law director is advised, and I'm not going to sign over his objection because it's inappropriate for the city to be indemnifying or for any municipality to be indemnifying. And this is something that they probably are routinely asked to remove or alter.
And I guess I would say that, in my view, it doesn't make sense for this issue to come back before you. I think it's sufficient to pass the motion subject to the approval of the city's law department, and we'll negotiate directly with them if they won't remove the clause, to wordsmith a provision that we can live with.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Sure.
I mean, the issue would be, if we end up with a materially different provision, just come back to you for your scrutiny and.
Sure. Then I'll make a motion to approve the attached retirement health savings agreement with Mission Squared, provided that paragraph 10 is struck from the agreement for the fire department.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gould. And on declaring an emergency?
No.
It's just a motion.
Okay, yeah, it's true, it's a motion. Okay, very good. So we have a motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mrs. Weiss. Is there any discussion on the motion? So
Just want to clarify, so we're striking, I don't have it right in front of me, that's the part that's indemnification versus hold harmless. And I'm just trying to understand, so Mr. McConville's saying that Ohio law, can you just clarify a little bit?
Yeah, so the motion as I understand it is we're just going to indicate to,
I know what it means, okay.
to the provider that
He's changing it.
the indemnification provision needs to come out, that's what's authorized. That is a discussion that we have fairly routinely, frankly, with vendors, because as a practical matter, we can't indemnify because you'd have to encumber funds to do that. So municipalities in Ohio just don't do that. And that leaves the contract void of any indemnification provision, which means that each party is responsible for their own acts, which I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
And I've also struck the hold harmless provisions because I don't, I mean, as a person who, you know,
Yeah.
I would not want my employer to hold harmless another party from any act that they would do. So I've struck it, and if they want to come back to us, they can, but.
All right, well,
Thank you.
okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm hopeful that we will be able to so negotiate, especially with this employee retiring, and be able to get this done in time for that employee to avail themselves to this HSA. So,
Was there a second?
I think there was.
Yes.
Mrs. Weiss.
Okay, yes. So is there any further discussion? If none, Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the motion?
Mrs. Blankfeld.
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks.
Aye.
Mr. Rock.
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. Cooney.
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Before I proceed to the next item, just as a point of order, I proceeded from item B without administering the oath to Mrs. Thomas.
Oh,
And I have an oath here. So, Mrs. Thomas, if you would not mind standing and raising your right hand and repeating after me. I,
I,
Kelly M. Thomas,
Kelly M. Thomas,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution
to support the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution
the Constitution
and laws
and laws
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter
and the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the City of University
of
Heights,
the City of University Heights,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability,
as Clerk of Council
as Clerk of Council
of the City of University Heights.
of the City of University Heights,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, and thank you, Mrs. Thomas. And now returning to the agenda. Item F is a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, and real estate matters. Mr. McConville, we spoke about this earlier. Do we have anything to enter into executive session over this evening?
No, as I indicated, Mayor, and I've talked to the Vice Mayor about this as well, I would normally ask for an executive session due to the fact that we have new members, so that I could update them on pending litigation and some related executive session matters. Due to the pandemic, it might not be the best thing for us to gather in a small space to do that. And in addition to that, I think that we want to schedule a meeting to go over some parliamentary matters and to discuss the open records law and the public meetings law, I'm sorry, the public records law and the open meetings law. And my thought is that I'll get an email out to the new members this week, offering them times both this week and next, including some times in the evenings where the three of us can get on Zoom and we can go over all of those things at the same time, including a comprehensive, back and forth over the executive session matters that probably, frankly, deserve a little more of your time than being rushed in an executive session where people may feel uncomfortable due to proximity. So that's my thought, that we would meet on Zoom either this week or next, and I would be available to answer any questions that you might have and give you a thorough overview so you're up to date.
Yeah. Yeah, so if there's no objection, and as the three of you do not constitute a quorum, it would not be inappropriate to proceed as the law director has indicated. Not that I would expect the law director to volunteer that we would proceed inappropriately, but it does seem to be the advisable way to proceed with this. The only drawback I see is that the three of you have to wait until that is scheduled to get these updates, but I don't believe that's going to cause any problem.
I appreciate the consideration for the safety. I really do. Thank you for making that alternative option.
Yeah, my pleasure. I indicated to the mayor and the vice mayor, it makes no difference to me. I mean, I'm willing to do either, but I think that it makes sense from a public health standpoint that we adhere to the same guidelines we're asking everyone else to adhere to, and I can make sure that you have the information that you need and be available to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Will that be all right with Mr. King and Mr. Cooney?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Well then, if there is no other motion, we will then move on from item F and go to reports and communications from the directors. As I excused all of our directors and chiefs from being here this evening, there is no report from finance. Mr. McConville, do you have a report?
No report this evening, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Public Safety Police, there is no report, as Chief Rogers is also on vacation as well as being excused. For Fire, I do have a written report, which I'll read into the record right now. Happy New Year to all, and a warm welcome to our new council members and prosecutor. My report this evening is to highlight the retirement of firefighter paramedic Michael J. DiDomenico. Firefighter DiDomenico has been serving the community of University Heights since 1989 with compassion and a commitment to serve. The retirement of firefighter DiDomenico will be effective January 9, 2022. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude for the dedicated service firefighter DiDomenico has displayed throughout his 32-plus year career as a member of our department. He has touched and positively impacted many lives throughout his career. We are and will always remain indebted to him for his services. I am grateful to have served with Mike and wish him the very best for his future and retirement. Please join me in congratulating him with best wishes and a happy retirement. Firefighter DiDomenico's last shift working in the firehouse will be January 5th, 2022. So thank you, Firefighter DiDomenico. And that will conclude the Public Safety Fire report. Service, there is no report, although I will advise that the final pass around the city of relief pickup is approximately 2/3 done, and 1/3 is left to go. Building, no report. Housing and community development, no report. City engineer, no report. Communications and civic engagement, no report. And economic development, no report. So we will now turn to the reports of standing committees and the taking of action thereon. Now, I'll defer to Vice Mayor Weiss. I believe you're still working out finalizing committee assignments. Perhaps I could just read off each committee, and if anybody has a report for any of these committees, we could hear it.
Yeah, the committee assignments will be finalized at the next meeting, so I think that's a good idea.
Very good, very good. Oh, then we will go with building and housing. Is there any report?
Building and Housing, our council clerk is working to schedule our next committee meeting to further discuss and refine the city's point-of-sale inspection process. And additionally, we waited until after the new year so she could take a while to serve to break. And she will be working to calendar a regularly scheduled monthly meeting for that committee for 2022.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mrs. Blankfeld. Community outreach, any report? Hearing no report, we'll move on to economic development. Any report?
I'll just mention, for the benefit of the incoming members, this committee will be working with the the new zoning code representatives, the firm that was selected. So I'll work with the administration to fine tune that schedule when they'll be coming on board. But once that happens, we'll work through our committee, and we'll have a steering committee of members from Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Architecture Review Board to work with that professional. And like I said, I'll work with the administration to come up with a timeline, and once I find that out, I'll report back.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Finance, any report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There is a finance meeting scheduled on January 19th in anticipation of the January 10th budget draft, and that is it right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Recreation, any report? Seeing none. Safety, any report? Seeing none. Service and Utilities.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. Committee of the Whole.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was, I guess, in safety, but there will be, after speaking to the law director, a fireworks ordinance at the next meeting. It's gone back and forth a few times, and hopefully the finalized version will be at the next meeting.
Okay, very good.
Vice
Thank-
Mayor?
Yeah.
Or Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Gould.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, will that be both the ordinance prohibiting and also, which the former prosecutor was working on, and then also the civil portion that Mr. McConville was working on?
That will initially be just the prohibition section that I'm going to be taking over the drafting of.
Okay.
And then we'll get to the zoning. I've got it on my list.
Okay, sure.
I'll endeavor to have a zoning ordinance to you sometime in February.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McConville. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Mrs. Weiss, anything further?
No.
Very good. Then we will move on to item 11, reports of special committees and the taking of action thereon. Are there any reports? Seeing none. Item 12 is unfinished and miscellaneous business. Is there any unfinished or miscellaneous business this evening? Seeing none. Item 13, is there a motion to adjourn?
Also move, Mayor.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Mrs. Blankfeld, second by Mr. Rock. Mrs. Thomas, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Blankfeld? Aye. Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Before we adjourn, our next meeting is Tuesday, January 18th, at 7 p.m. It is on Tuesday due to Martin Luther King Day being a city holiday. So, motion passes, and we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening. Welcome aboard. Yeah, figured.
That's got to be a record. I'm not complaining.
I am
So we
back.
got kittens. Oh my God, they're so cute. They're so tiny. Yeah.
Two,
Yeah, they're sisters.
because one wasn't enough.
I know. No, they have to keep each other comfortable.
That's what I said about Baxter. He needs a pet.
He needs a pet.